As I mentioned earlier in this series of videos, movement is a big trend in all things design, but not just with typography. This means more GIFs and videos take center stage in the design pieces and in advertising. Motion can do wonders to catch one's attention in our busy, cluttered digital lives. There's many studies, and some conducted by Facebook and other major players, that points to the benefit of adding a little motion to your static ads, stories, and photos, as they tend to yield higher conversion and click-through rates. And it doesn't always have to be this fully animated 3D video. It could be as a simple 4-frame GIF that allows designers to show movement that draws users' eyes to the screen. It can be adding slight animation to social media posts or making small elements move in your design. It could even be for presentation purposes, by showing your work in action on behance.com, for example, or on your portfolio. Animated GIFs are nothing new, and they're not just for cat memes anymore, but they're a great way for a graphic designer to become introduced to adding motion to your work, as it's super simple and easy to learn. In the next lesson, we're going to quickly learn how to do an animated GIF in Photoshop. We'll be doing a simple 6-frame animation and exporting it as a GIF to use on our website, social media, and more. There's an Adobe software app called Adobe After Effects, which is included in the Adobe Creative Cloud subscription. That is a premier pro software solution to adding animations to your designs and typography. This software is next level stuff if you're wanting to move past simple GIF animations and into something more detailed and immersive, especially animation with typography. Anytime you run across this super smooth animation like the one seen here, it's a good chance it was created using After Effects. Photoshop and other GIF creation programs use a series of photos to create your animation, and After Effects uses algorithms to create a much more silky movement. But do be aware of the steep learning curve. It's been called Photoshop with a timeline, meaning not only is there complexities of adding effects, but you also now have this timeline to think about, and in some cases a 3D space. You can use it to animate just about anything, including logos, animated posters, movement and type, and social media ads and videos. Today we're in Adobe Photoshop and we're going to use the timeline option to create a very simple 6-frame animation. Just like you're seeing here, we're going to have some simple typography come onto the screen and off of the screen. As you can see, once you learn this way of doing GIF animations, you can apply it to so many different things, including social media campaigns and anything that has pictures, photos, type, or graphics. So we're going to open up a new document in Adobe Photoshop. It's going to be a standard Instagram size post. So let's do 1080 by 1080 pixels with 300 ppi resolution and have everything else be default. Go ahead and click on Create, just doing a simple Instagram post size. What we're going to do is go over to our Layers panel, and we are just going to add a simple background. Just going to get our rectangle tool and adding a simple background to our Instagram post. We'll make a nice colorful gradient. We're just going to double click and add one in our Layer Styles panel, just doing a little gradient overlay. We can of course change the direction everything is going and have it be lighter on the top. And click OK, and we have everything set up. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go up to Window, and we're going to load our timeline. So Window, Timeline. This is how you do all of your GIF animations, is through this panel. Now it's going to ask you for 2 options: to create a frame animation or to create a video timeline. So creating a video timeline will give you the chance to have more detailed control over typography and fading in of photos and movement. It acts a little bit more like a video editing program where you have keyframes and all sorts of complexities. And I go over this in more detail in my Digital Design Masterclass, but we're going to create a very simple frame animation. This is going to be even more simple to do. So we're going to create a frame animation and click on the button. It's going to load our frames. So I created 3 different type layers. I want these to slowly fade in and slowly fade out as a part of our animation. So what we want to do is we want to get all these to 0% opacity. So right over here on our layers panel, we want all 3 of these to be 0%. We want them all to start off as they're not on the screen at all. So we're just going to reduce all these to 0 opacity right there in our layers panel. And we're going to create our first animation frame. So we're going to go click on here and add a new frame. And for the second frame, we want our first word, happy, to show. So we're going to go to our happy layer and increase the opacity. And now we're ready for our next animation. So we're going to do another frame. And now we want the next word to come in. So new, we're going to make that 100% opacity. We're going to create a new frame, and we want our last word to come in, make that 100% opacity. So now we're going to have the word slowly fade out. So let's create another frame. Now we want year to fade right back out. Create another layer. Now it's time for new to be reduced back to 0. And our last frame, where happy is down to 0. And what's great about this is if we do loop it, we're ending on the same frame that we're beginning. So you're not going to see a lot of changes between these, and it's going to be able to loop very nicely. So let's say we want to play a loop. We're going to go right down here. You'll see the word forever. We're going to go ahead and do the drop down arrow and select looping options. And we're going to make sure it's set to forever so it continues to loop and loop and loop. So we can go ahead and hit the play button, kind of see how it looks. And it's a little bit too fast, and that's no problem. Right now we have almost 0 seconds. This is the time between each frame transition. It's 0 seconds, so it's going to be incredibly fast. But we can hold down the shift button and select all of our frames, and we can change them all at the same time to be around 0.2 seconds. So that's going to add 0.2 seconds between each frame and make it a little bit slower. So let's play. It's still a tiny bit fast, but you could put your own custom time in here. So instead of 0.2, let's type in other and do 0.3 seconds between each frame. Click on OK, and let's see how that looks. And with each one of these frames, you're not stuck with just typography. You can bring in photos and bring them out. There's a lot of things you can do with frame animation. And there's also something called tweening right here. And what tweening does is it adds extra frames between two frame animations to make it a little bit more drawn out. So let's say I don't want the words just to pop out. I want them to slowly fade in and slowly fade out. What we could do is we can add a tweening animation between happy and new. So I'm going to click on happy and click right down here on tween, and I'm going to click on it. It's going to add a couple of extra frames for me. And let's add 5 frames by default. We're going to click on OK. Went ahead and loaded 5 extra frames for us. So now between the 2 frames, I have the opacity being reduced or increased to show the word happy. So now it slowly fades in the words. And so that's what tweening does, is it adds this extra, whatever frames you want to add in to make the transition more smooth. So we can go back and play. You can see how it fades in, and you can speed these up a little bit faster. So let's take our tweened frames and let's make that a lot faster. You can see how the word fades in a little bit. So there's also the tweening option I wanted to kind of show you guys. So how do you export and see a GIF? When you're ready and you're happy with the animation, and let's go ahead and go back in our history and just remove the tweening. Let's go back to our simple 6-frame animation. So now we're ready to export. We're going to go to File, Export, and we're going to go down to Save for Web, Legacy. It's going to give us a lot more options when exporting GIFs. And we can change the size of our GIF by reducing the amount of colors and quality of our GIF. But right now, since it's a pretty simple one, I'm going to keep it at the best quality possible. So 128 dithered by default is perfectly fine. Same thing with colors. The more you reduce the colors, the more the file size will be reduced. And you can see the file size right down here in this area. You'll see it's only 103 kilobytes, which is nothing. That's a fantastic size to use. A lot of these options you can leave as default. And we could go ahead and click on Save. You can also have some looping animations right here. Down here it says forever, but you can also just do it once if you just want your animation to play once and stay on the final screen. But right now we're going to have it loop. So let's do forever and save. So let's say I want to preview our little GIF animation. When you double click on it, I'm on a Mac, and I think the same thing happens on a Windows. you'll see all the frames broken down into different images, which is exactly what a GIF is a series of images put together as an animation. What I want to do is I want to preview it in a browser. So I'm going to drag it over to a browser, in this case Firefox, and we could see our animation happening. And now we're ready to upload it. Of a simple framed GIF is this example of a social media post where we can kind of bring in typography, bring it away, have things come in, and it just creates a more dynamic image instead of just a static image. Just adds that little extra bit of movement, and it doesn't take a whole lot of work. And by the way, these are hand-drawn assets you're seeing that I did in Procreate, so you can kind of have something a little bit more exciting and dynamic than just simple typography from a computer. I go over more complex timeline-driven GIFs, which is the other option that showed up when I first started the frame GIF. We go over that in much more detail in my digital design masterclass, where we do 45 minutes to an hour to create kind of a little bit more complicated of a timeline-driven GIF. If you want to have more control over fading in, zooming in of photos, that's definitely the way to go. But for this class, I wanted to just do a brief introduction to the most simple form of GIF that you can do, which is the frame animation GIF.